everybody, welcome back to the channel. Glad to have you with me again. I am Dean, the Throttle Cracker. Welcome to the second episode on the channel. There's been quite a delay since the first one. A whole lot of personal developments. We had to move. Keeping busy working has been a challenge, etc., etc. But we're in better digs now. We're better equipped to finish the car. We're in a comfortable spot. I've even got my own office / studio now, so that's a nice change. So let's talk about, we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to get a little bit into the Mark II Supra, the second gen Supra that I'm working on, the one on the screen now, or as I call this one, Mr. Burns. Well, this is Mr. Burns, and as you guys know, Mr. Burns is getting a new engine. Now, before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the car itself. Like I say, so this is a 1985 Toyota Supra P-type or performance type. They came in a luxury or a performance type. It's also known as an MA61. It came with a what's known as a 5MG. It's an inline 6-cylinder. This is the engine that was in the car. So this is an inline 6, 2.8 liters, dual overhead cams. Came factory, don't quote me, right around 170 horsepower. The engine is actually, for its time, was very modern. This is the first production inline 6-cylinder dual overhead cam engine to use hydraulic lash adjusters. It is a multi-port injection. It's not throttle body. There are 6 injectors. Used a belt for timing duty. Very solid, very reliable motor. Not huge power output, not a real rever, that's for sure. Really good torque delivery. Has some really good down low grunt and a decent top end rush. This one was modified. Typical bolt-ons. Actually had a TRD header on it. Egr Delete. Got rid of anything under the hood that was heavy. No air conditioning whatsoever. Modified the intake a little bit. We got rid of the heated throttle body. We got rid of the mechanical fan. There's an electric fan stuck on the front of the radiator, which worked beautifully. The typical bolt-on stuff, because once you get into the motor, it's super expensive. Now, if you know these cars, they're great cars. I'm a huge fan of the Mark II Supra. They go around a corner real good. They're supremely comfortable. The inside of the car has an excellent driving seat. They come with Recaro seats from the factory. 4-wheel independent suspension, 4-wheel disc brakes, manual transmission, a very aggressive rear end gear. Not really good on the highway, but they were definitely fun in town. Mine's currently got the 410 with a limited slip in it, and I have another rear end kicking around with an even more aggressive 430 ratio, which is getting a little crazy because this is only like a 28-inch tall tire on the car, or 27-inch tall tire. It's not a big tire. It's very rev happy on the highway. From what I remember, doing about 110 kilometers is over 3,000 RPM. It was about 3,200 RPM. That's a pretty brutal cruising speed. Not super efficient. They are reliable, but it was getting to the point where, well, it's at a point now where parts for them are becoming hard to find and harder to pay for. Aftermarket stuff like performance, like if you want to throw in some good pistons and these things to get a proper compression ratio, it's custom only. The cylinder heads like to crack and piss oil all over the place. It is a pretty modern chamber. It would be considered a polyspherical hemi chamber. Relatively small valves. The cylinder head is the limiting factor on these things for sure. The intake ports do not have much size or volume to them at all, and really so does the exhaust. Everything's round. It's old tech. Now, even in its current state, when the engine was out, it probably didn't even make 200 horsepower. Probably with all the mods and everything, it probably picked up around 15 horsepower realistically, which isn't bad. The car is even bone stock, it's fun. It's a fun car. It's the slow car fast, right? You got to drive it sort of hard to get its worth out of it, but it's awesome fun when you drive it hard. As far as daily driver goes, it's excellent. It's an excellent daily driver. Incredibly comfortable cars. If you've ever driven one, you can sit in these things for, you could do, you know, a several 100-kilometer trip and not complain at all when you get out of the car. That being said, if you've had one of these cars, we all go down the same road. If you're anything like me, and probably the same as everybody else watching, if they had more power, the car would be a terror. The chassis is more capable in the corners than the car, or than the engine is. Like, it'll go through a corner, even with stock tires. It'll go through a corner harder than the engine can pull it out of the corner. So it's limited by the engine in some terms. So now so everybody goes down the same rabbit hole with this engine. What do I do? If you want to go naturally aspirated, it's very expensive. Custom cams, and then if you have a big enough cam where it's actually going to make a difference on these motors, where it actually increase the RPM, you definitely need custom made adjustable cam gears. You're going to need custom made pistons, because the low compression pistons are just going to piss off any cylinder pressure that a big cam is already going to be reducing. Then you have to go to lash caps. They use once you grind the cams to these sizes, they use a bucket over a shim to. It's a Mickey Mouse setup at best. It's not reliable. They might make decent power, but you're into the cost of it. For just cams and pistons now, you're at a pretty substantial dollar amount, and then you still have this cylinder head that is the limiting factor. Bottom end is strong. I've never had any issues. I've had several of these. I've never had any issues with the bottom end. You can rev the piss out of them as much as you want, but you just don't need to, so the bottom end really doesn't take that much abuse. The motors also tend to be a little bit noisy. They do like to make a rattle. It's not unusual for these the hydraulic lash adjusters to make a little ticky, which can be freaking annoying and kind of irritating. It's a 1985 fuel injection system as well. It's not, for the time it was excellent. It's not quite digital. Anything after 4,000 RPM, it doesn't matter what the engine sensors are telling you. It's all pre-programmed data points. It doesn't matter if you've done mods or anything like that to the engine. It just does a predetermined engine map, period. Not the hot way to go. Okay, so Dean, why didn't you turbo the car? Why didn't you just throw a turbo on it? Turbo is cheap and easy, right? Sure. It definitely would take care of the piss poor cylinder head. Low compression works great with boost. Bottom end will take enough boost, I think, but now you're at the issue with the stock ignition and stock fuel supply. Now you pretty much need to go to a standalone ignition system, or standalone controls completely, period. Big money, pain in the ass. Now you got to pay somebody to tune if you're not capable or equipped to do it yourself. Intercooler plumbing. It's not a super setup to get an intercooler set under the hoods of these things. Typically what you're doing is using a 7M motor, which is the next generation Mark III Supra motor, the 7M GTE. As you can see, they look really, really similar because they are very similar. 7M GT, 4 valves per cylinder, typically distributorless. So the whole turbo idea, sure, it would satisfy one criteria: more power. Okay, turbo inline 6, not my favorite. It had better be German if you want to do a turbo inline 6, in my opinion. Keep in mind, everything on this channel is my opinion. If I'm stating something factual and it's wrong, let me know in the comments. I'll fix it happily. So turbo 5M, while it would meet the power requirements, I want this thing to be reliable. It's a daily driver, right? It's a daily driver. I want the thing to be reliable. I want to be able to drive this thing from here in British Columbia to, I don't know, if for some strange reason I wanted to drive to the eastern side of the country. I want to be able to do it reliably. And a 5M under boost is not that engine. So, of course, the Toyota friends and the Toyota crowd and the Supra friends, they will throw 7M GTE in it, like I was referring to, and they'll throw a 7M in it. Okay, same idea. They're still not a super great motor. They're better. They're fairly reliable, but they don't meet the affordable part of the whole equation. Yeah, they make a lot of power. I don't want to spend... the wiring conversion is just more than I want to get into, and then it's still just another Toyota inline 6-cylinder, still cheap or expensive to repair. Parts are still getting hard to find. A shitload more custom aftermarket parts available, granted, but it wasn't going to meet my cost requirements. It wasn't going to meet the reliability requirements, so we passed on that. And then, of course, the rest of the Supra crowd, people with more money than knowledge, Dino, you gotta throw the 2J in it. The 2J. Now this is the famous motor. This is a beautiful example of one. Obviously has a massive turbo, single turbo on it. But this is the motor that came from the Mark IV Supras. This is the last iteration of Toyota inline 6-cylinder turbo motors. This is a famous motor for being, in its stock form, being capable of sustaining insane amounts of boost. The bottom end, depending on who you talk to, can take several hundred horsepower before it needs any buttoning up. Back when I was a kid, it was the numbers have increased. Back when I was a kid, it was like you can bolt on and boost these things. They'll take 600 horse out of the stock bottom end. Now, no problem. 600 horsepower. Now it's like 25 years later, and these things will take 900 horsepower stock bottom end. Don't need to get into them until 900 horsepower. Whatever. So in stock trim, these things come with a twin turbo. Super powerful engine. Tons of aftermarket. If they're more reliable, I don't know. I don't have any seat time with one of these. But they certainly do not meet the cost requirement. These are, around here, too rare. It's too rare of a motor. If it would be nice. Same thing. The conversion is a whole lot of electrical involved. 85 isn't really suited to that swap, as well as putting it in like a Mark III, the next gen Supra. I mean, it would be cool. Still not the thing. And I'm all about sound. Yes, a 2J makes some pretty snotty sound. Once you've dumped 20 grand into a 2J, yeah, you definitely got all the power in the world and a wicked sound. But I like the sound of a V8. I'm a V8 guy. V8 manual transmission is incredibly hard to beat in terms of fun to drive. Prove me wrong. So, well, then of course the crowd is then, well, of course, why didn't you go with the one you said, the Toyota V8, the 4-cam V8? Okay. Many reasons. First of all, just go to your parts counter and tell them you want parts for a Lexus V8. Boom, it's expensive off the bat. Second, power output, really not that impressive for what it is. Third reason, they're pretty rare around here too. Not a lot of Lexus V8s in North American market. Certainly not enough to make it popular with the aftermarket. There's really not much going on for these things in terms of my expense or my budget. Nothing I want to play with. Toyota V8, meh, not into the one unit. So cheap, readily available, super reliable, and transmission options need to be you need to have some transmission options without having to spend fortunes on adapters, bell housing adapters to put whatever transmission you want behind it. So what did I go with? Well, this is what I put in. I put in a Ford 302. This is from a while ago. This is a bit of an older picture. We've had more work completed since then. So this is an old Fox body 5-liter Mustang motor and transmission. Actually, this is I went with a T5 transmission. Got a brand new T5. Went with a Ford 302. Now, literally, you could drive this car from here to Florida, break down in every city in every state, and every parts store in town will have parts. For some reason, if I can't wrench on it, there's not a mechanic in the world who doesn't know how to. All right, that's a big deal. Now, power output. Okay, sound. If you don't know what a 5-liter Mustang sounds like, I don't know where you've been. Google it. 302s make a beautiful sound. This is a short stroke motor. This is a very physically small motor, as you can see in the. This is under the hood of my car. There's an absolute shitload of room left. It fit perfectly. It's a very physically small motor. There's an aftermarket for these things. I mean, they come around. These motors started in 1969. There's an aftermarket for these things, like for days. This particular one. Now, it's a daily driver, so I wasn't going for maximum output, but I was going for, if in the future, there's a good chance I'm going to upgrade the bottom end. We'll probably, or the block side of things. We'll keep the 302 for now until the car can handle more power in terms of a rear differential, and then we'll probably go up to a bigger stroker motor. Now, in that case, the bottom end, the block remains physically the same, and all my cylinder heads and everything just bolt onto it. So we sort of picked parts to match with future potential while keeping fairly usable combo with the 302. And everything is new. The only thing that's stock on this motor right now, it has a Ford block and it has a Ford crankshaft. Everything else is aftermarket, brand new. Aluminum heads, aluminum intake, aluminum carburetor, aluminum distributor, aluminum water pump, aluminum radiator, aluminum pulleys. Everything is aluminum because I like aluminum, but B, it's most importantly, it's light. So this is a big factor in this car. I wasn't going to drop a V8 in the thing and lose all the handling just for the sake of more power and sound, right? That's just not, that's not how I'm going to do it. Fact is that this 302 with all the aluminum on it is, I believe, around exactly the same weight as the 5M 6-cylinder that came out of it, and because the V8 is physically shorter, like less tall, and it's shorter front to rear, and I managed to get, I don't know if you can actually see it in the picture here. Yeah, kinda. Okay, so that's you can see the passenger side shock tower. I've managed to get about 75% of this motor behind the front wheels. So the center of gravity is actually going to have moved back and down a little bit as the motor is shorter. Inline 6 is quite tall with a lot of mass going up and down. This is all mass at the bottom. So the car will, at the very least, handle the same, if not maybe a tiny little bit better, because the center of gravity has moved back and slightly down, as well as it's got a ton more power. So this motor, because it's a daily driver, we weren't going for huge numbers. I wasn't going for maximum effort, and even still, it was difficult to keep this build under 400 horsepower. Sort of working around the cylinder heads that I've chosen, based mostly on cost and availability. They're 190 cc intake, so these things are capable of quite a bit more power than we're going to be using. It is a high compression motor. It's fully rollerized. It's going to sound amazing. It's going to drive awesome. It's carbureted. I didn't go with any fuel injection. Keep it easy, simple, reliable for now, until we can get more exotic in the future. So that's the rundown on Mr. Burns for now. All right, the rest of the car, it's been lowered about an inch. It's got good brakes on it, stock disc brakes, but we've got like good aftermarket slotted vented cross-drilled rotors, ceramic pads. And if you know these cars, they stop like a monster. This thing will throw you through the windshield even stock. Still rocking the stock wheels, 14-inch tires still. Those will be going soon, mainly because there's no choice for 14-inch tires. There's literally one brand available around here. So I'm running 235 60/14s on all four corners. Handles great. It actually hooks up quite well. But that'll be the limiting factor in the build for now. Is we're running the stock 7.5 inch rear diff. We're not going to a bigger tire to hook up because we're just going to start blowing shit up. So rear end stays for now. That'll be a different project, maybe next summer or the summer after, maybe preferably winter. Yeah, so I think that's about all I'm going to cover in this video for now. We're going to get into more specifics on engine placement, engine selection, location, how to see a few steps into the future when you're placing motors, components to pick, all of the shit that goes along with a V8 swap or swapping one engine into another car. Really doesn't have to be a V8. So we're going to get our hands dirty on a lot more of the technical points of it. Also, the car had to get had to cut a hole in the hood for the intake to clear, so we went a little bit different with that. I didn't want a big ugly round air filter on the car. We'll cover how to cut a hole in a hood without fucking your hood, so you have to throw it away. We will cover what else? Well, I had to make several mounts, transmission mounts, engine mounts. We had to run a slave cylinder, which never came on this transmission. It was cable operated from a Mustang with a quadrant pedal bullshit. So we had to fabricate a bunch of stuff. We're going to show you how to fabricate stuff easily enough, the right way to figure out where stuff goes, and most importantly, the whys, like the why you're doing that. People know that they need to do things, but they don't necessarily know why they're doing them. So we'll tell you why you need to do it, and then you can figure out the right way to do it. Okay, good. I think that should do it for now. Thanks for joining me, and stay tuned for more, hopefully content coming out soon, and hopefully you can finish the car soon. It's not quite finished, and we're getting into spring. Mostly limited by time, but more importantly, money. You can't wait for winter to end. Okay, I think that'll do. All right, take care, you guys.